Welcome everyone. This is Ron Russell. I'm a regional administrator with Green Hills AEA. This is the first of several brief screencasts, and the intention of these screencasts is to provide an explanation of some of the changes that have occurred in the statewide special education procedures. Links of these recordings will be going out to our own AA staff and also special education teachers and coordinators, and the plan is to kind of do a walkthrough with you on some of the changes that just came out in the July 2013 updates. Now, what you see on the screen right now hopefully is familiar to many of you. The Iowa IDEA Info.org website. This is sort of a one-stop shopping for a lot of the information we need in special education. Most of you realize that there's links to Web IEP, links to state guidance on IEPs, some helpful links like that to the Iowa Department of Ed, and also information on the new Web IEP, Medicaid, and different areas for good reference. Now, what I wanted to draw your attention to right now is notice that there's kind of a highlight story right here of special education statewide procedures updates. And if we click and go there, you see a screen that looks like this. And most of you know that over the past several years, the pattern has become in January and July of each year, we have updates. There's a state group that coordinates changes in language, corrections, additions, and things that need to occur. And so we've gone away from printing manuals, and they're all electronic. And so I would just really encourage everybody to get rid of the old January manual and download a fresh copy from this website so that you know that you'll have the most current information. It is a large manual. It's over 500 pages, but again, we're discouraging people from printing. You can download it as a PDF, and there is a nice navigatable kind of a document with hot links that will help you find lots of information pretty easily. Notice also there's a link that says Release Notes. Now, the Release Notes would be a document that looks like this, and this is a much shorter document, less than 20 pages. And this is a great way to review some of the changes. So a person can read this document and get a picture of what's new and different, what has changed in the state procedures. We'll actually be using this to walk you through some of the changes, but I just want you to know that that was there. Now we go back to this document, and this is actually a download version of that large procedures manual that I was mentioning. Looks like this, and hopefully you'll get this downloaded to your computer. It'll always be available on the web, but things move a lot more quickly if you have it downloaded, and just keep that on your desktop. And I just wanted to remind everybody how easy it is to navigate. If I click on Table of Contents, you can see I get a nice table like this, and for all of our different categories on special education procedures, we can page through and we get a couple options here. Let's jump back there. We can go to Table of Contents Detail or directly to a section. So if I click on Go to that section, it just takes me right to the beginning of the chapter on Child Find, which I selected there. But let's look again here. If I go to Detail, I'm just picking an early section here. Notice how it breaks it down, Child Find and some subsections. I want to point out these subsections don't look like they're linked, but however they are. So if I go down here and say I'd really like to jump right towards the section on exclusionary factors in Child Find and read about that, simply click here, and it's nice, it takes me right to the specific section. So again, you'll want to get this on your computer and hopefully eliminate what is now dated January edition. Last thing I wanted to point out, just in terms of navigation and where things are, if I scroll down on my table of contents, you'll see there are several appendices. The particular one I wanted to point out here, first of all, was the documentation guide. This is actually what used to be a separate manual that had sort of a page-by-page view of the IEP with guidance. And now that's been just incorporated into the large manual as an appendix. So if I go to the detail on the documentation guide, if you look at this list, you'll see this is showing us the many pages of the IEP. And let's scroll down a little bit just to show you how this would work. I may scroll through here, and let's say that I would like to look at the goal page. Here's page D, Goal Development and Progress Monitoring. Again, this is a link. It's not a hot blue link, but I can click there and it takes me right to a picture of what the goal page looks like. And each of these is a link as well. So if I click on, for example, let's go to progress monitoring. Notice it takes me to guidance that I can read there. And they have it set up pretty well too here, where you can jump back to the table of contents for the appendix. So if I click here, it takes me right back and I can go to a different page. I might say I'd like to look at page F and get some guidance there. I click there, it takes me right there. And again, everything that is in blue is a hot link that will take me to more guidance. And again, I can jump back to the table here as well. Many of you know that another change this year, a big change, is that there's been a newly programmed version of WebIEP. And within this documentation guide, you'll notice some graphics that kind of illustrate data entry as well. The system, and many of you had opportunities to have some training last May on the new system, instead of being a completely what you see is what you get kind of a system, typing into forms, in a lot of cases we're typing data into tabs and then the forms are created. So when this manual, this appendix of the documentation guide was rewritten, you'll notice as you go through there are some graphics that kind of help you see what the data entry would look like as well as what the final form would look like. Now as you look at the screen now, you'll see release notes. I've gone back to that summary of changes, and I'm going to highlight in this video and then another video to follow some of the things that I think are maybe bigger changes, things that people would need to know about right away. There are some things on here that are a little bit of minutia. They're small things. You can read them for yourselves, and sometimes they're just clarifications of language. I'm going to try to highlight several of the things that I think are maybe of most interest to people. And I'm going to scroll down here. I'll hop around a little bit, and I'm going to go first to goal development. Let's go to the guidance on that. Now this is I think kind of an important little clarification in some of the languages in here. Several years back, we received word that because Iowa was going to go towards an alternate assessment 2, which meant there would be another option in addition to alternate assessments, somewhat of a modified state test of the Iowa assessments that would be for 2% of our kids that perhaps didn't have severe cognitive disabilities but were struggling with the state test. And there was language in the federal regs and IDEA that indicated if a state chose to do that, we would have to do standards-based goals. And that kind of got into a whole discussion of should goals always be on grade level, should they not be? First thing I wanted to point out is that alternate assessment 2 is not going to happen in Iowa, so that project is not proceeding, and so we are not required to have standards-based goals. But what you see on the screen here I think is really good guidance, and this is going to help us with that question that's been out there for a while of whether or not we should always have grade level goals. The short answer is, the question is, does every student need to have a goal that's projecting them to move towards grade level material? Short answer is no, but let's kind of walk through the guidance here. And this is an IEP team discussion. It's a decision to be made by the Iowa IEP teams. And let's just kind of walk through here. First of all, when we develop goals, we do want teachers thinking about, where do we want kids to be based on standards. We have the early learning standards for preschoolers. We have Iowa Core, of course, and Iowa Core Essential Elements. I'll briefly talk about this term because this may be a new term. It probably is a new term to a lot of people. And this is actually an extension of Iowa Core and Common Core that isn't even released yet in Iowa. We anticipate this fall we will see this document being released. This would be a document that would be primarily used by teachers that have students with severe cognitive disabilities, and it breaks Iowa Core down in a way that shows how students could be exposed to Core and they could learn from Core, but at different levels of cognitive complexity. So know that that is coming, but the emphasis of this bullet really is that we should start thinking about Core standards, where we want kids to be. In the manual, it also makes some distinctions. It uses some language such as what is an outcome versus what is an indicator. And so, for example, an outcome might be improving reading comprehension, but sometimes we might measure that with something like reading fluency because of the correlation. That might be a tool we'd use for monitoring a goal. We do want to set rigorous goals. This is a message we really want to communicate. Frankly, we don't want to have wimpy goals for kids. We want to raise the bar for kids. Now, we just said we won't always have grade level goals. Not all students can certainly can reach grade level, particularly in a year. But if we're going to close the achievement gap, we want to set rigorous goals that hopefully would good instruction would cause kids to grow more than 1 year in a year's time period and gradually work on closing the gap. There's four bullets of guidance here. Let's just kind of read through those. Whenever the team can reasonably project that the individual can reach and or maintain the age or grade level expectations, this is the outcome we're looking at. So there are some students, perhaps students that have milder learning disabilities, where we may monitor with grade level materials and we may project students moving towards age or grade level expectations. However, look at the next bullet, whenever it is not reasonable to expect an individual to reach age or grade level expectations within the IEP year, the IEP team selects an intended outcome representing substantial progress towards age and grade level expectations. So I will give you an example. Let's imagine we have, let's say, an 8th grader. And maybe that 8th grader is progressing in reading, but perhaps their current reading level might be 2nd or 3rd grade. It wouldn't be reasonable, even with very strong instruction, to expect that student to be reading at the 8th grade level by the end of the year. However, we want to go back to that rigor. Let's set rigorous goals, and we want to select an outcome that represents substantial progress. Not staying still, not staying stagnant, but working towards age and grade level expectations. Our 3rd bullet, whenever a student is not expected to reach age and grade level expectations, it is preferable for the team to select an outcome that reflects more than 1 year's growth in a year's time. So again, that goes back to closing the gap. So if we're saying that getting to grade level is certainly not reasonable for that student, we still want to focus on rigorous instruction. We want to focus on trying to close that achievement gap. And so we want to have a goal that is not a slight goal. We want a goal that's going to represent more than 1 year's growth in a year's time. And so we'll need to work towards getting more and more tools where we have benchmarks that will let us do good planning and figuring out what is about a year's growth, what is more, and that'll help us move towards rigor. And finally, this last bullet here, for students who have significant cognitive disabilities, and these would be our kids who are assessed with the Iowa Alternate Assessment. So those students, it says establish the intended outcome as a grade level essential element. And that's the preferred method. And keep in mind, this is going to be a document that will be new to teachers, but it will give examples of how we can work on grade level core content, but at a different cognitive complexity level. And we can also think about substantial progress towards grade level essential elements. Okay, so I think this is helpful guidance. I think a lot of folks in our AA have been asking for clarification on this issue of must we have grade level goals, and this gives us some guidance in that area. I'm going to end this recording, and I will have a part 2 where we'll continue on talking about some other changes in the procedures.